Administrator Criswell, recently in North Carolina and with these storms and hurricanes that have hit this year, there have been very large-scale moments of disinformation regarding FEMA, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
One of those that I've just seen is this idea that, and I'm going to ask you if this is true or not, and I apologize that I even have to ask you some of these things, but I think it's important for the American people to see in a setting like this, where we have to swear to tell the truth, that we see officially on the record that these things are not true. The first being that the suggestion that FEMA assistance was only a $750 loan that would have to be paid back, and if not, FEMA would seize the homes of everyday people who may not be able to make that back in such a catastrophic moment. Is that correct?
That is completely inaccurate.
Completely false, correct? But was it in your assessment, and did you see lots of people believing this on the ground or in the field?
I was on the ground for over 3 weeks in North Carolina, and I did hear from people on the ground asking me, is this real or is this not real?
So you know those devastating hurricanes that we just had in the southeast of this country, and how there was a lot of misinformation flying around regarding the government's involvement in said hurricanes? The craziest ones were that the Democrats were controlling the weather and that the Democrats were in fact causing these hurricanes in order to create a system which allowed for voter fraud in the election. But some other information just as ridiculous, but maybe not so dramatic, was that FEMA, which is an emergency department of the government for natural disasters and such, was handing out loans to individuals impacted by the hurricanes, and that if they didn't pay those loans back, that FEMA would seize their homes from them. All of this misinformation, making an already catastrophic and incredibly stressful situation that much more stressful and scary for the people who had to deal with it. And none of it was true. But the Republican establishment really likes spreading disinformation when it comes to the left and the Democratic Party.
Another one that I also saw very widely circulated, that FEMA did not have enough money to provide relief services because that allocation of funds went to either undocumented immigrants, aid to Ukraine, or even aid to the Israeli government. Is that correct, that FEMA's funds were allocated away to those causes?
Completely inaccurate.
Completely false. On the record, completely false, correct?
Correct.
And other things that we've seen as well, that it's standing policy for FEMA to politically discriminate. We know that that's not true, correct?
Correct.
And there was an incident we see, but that individual was fired, and that this is not a policy at scale, correct?
Correct.
God, they'll just fit fear-mongering about immigrants in anywhere they can, won't they? And because of the actions and the text of one individual who was reprimanded accordingly, all of FEMA was blamed for this one action.
Maybe the best evidence we have is the actual screenshot. Can you put the screenshot up on the screen? Let's look at what the text message said. The text message said, implement best practices. Like, this is the best practices. We're going to implement them. And they talk about making sure you're going in pairs or with more than one person, avoid the Trump homes, drink your water, take your towel, coconut waters. So stay hydrated, walk with someone else, and don't go to the Trump homes. It seems pretty common and matter of fact in the actual evidence we do have, the text message itself. But you're still saying Miss Washington and this other person aren't telling the truth.
When I received this text message, it was not in accordance with the way we conduct business at FEMA, and I directed
Even though it said
termination.
best practices, even though it said stay hydrated, which everyone would agree with, even though it said go in pairs, which everyone would agree with, even though it said bring a towel, make sure you're covered up, even it said coconut water is the best way to stay, even though it said all these practical things, the part about avoiding the Trump homes, that's not a best practice, that's not commonplace. Is that what you're saying?
That is nowhere in our policy, and I can't speak to
I'm not saying it's in your
motivations
policy.
behind what Ms. Washington did.
Listen, that individual was wrong. in an emergency situation, if you are providing aid, you provide aid to everyone affected by that emergency situation. And that is FEMA policy. And because this one individual did not follow FEMA endorsed policy, all of FEMA was blamed for being politically discriminatory. This person was fired, the situation was taken care of, but because the list said coconut water and stay hydrated, apparently Jim Jordan can't get through his thick head that this was not endorsed or accepted by FEMA. The person was fired.
Let's be honest about what's happening here today. My Republican colleagues want to cherry pick this incident and sensationalize it. Well, the reality is that for decades, there has been different treatment by FEMA, for instance, towards Black and brown communities. Hurricanes Katrina, Maria, Ida, Florence, Harvey, we all saw communities of color served last or not at all. And those are difficult to discuss, but important. Several reports and investigations confirmed what those of us who are part of those communities already knew, that white disaster victims were helped first and with more money than Black people of color, even when the damage was the same. Rather than fixate on a single incident, this committee should be working to ensure that the entire system is equitable for all Americans and that we're building on the work of the administration to make that so. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would also like to thank Administrator Criswell for being here with us today on a very long day, obviously. But let's be real, what FEMA does has never been more critical, because right now, climate change has completely flipped the script. Storms like Milton and Helene hitting landlocked states, that was unthinkable not too long ago. But now we've got places like Asheville, North Carolina, 2,000 feet above sea level and hundreds of miles from the coast, getting wrecked by hurricanes and extreme weather.
FEMA historically has had issues, but claiming that they are politically biased when they are, in fact, historically biased against not Trumpers, not white people, but communities of color, who she rightfully pointed out receive money last, receive less money, is something that we do need to address. And trying to focus on this false narrative that they're biased against Trumpers bastardizes the fact that they are biased against certain other individuals. Getting rid of FEMA is not the solution. FEMA is something that we need now more than ever. We keep having every year record amounts of natural disasters across this country because climate change is very real and it is creating multiple natural disasters, and we need assistance for people affected by these disasters. But we do need to see change within FEMA. Not get rid of it because it's a waste of taxpayer money because it just discriminates against Trumpers, which is not true. That was the text of one person acting on their own who was fired. It needs to be fixed to help everybody equally across the board, and we need to fix it and we need to keep it functioning for our own citizens' benefit moving forward in the future.